The last thing Clara remembered was her father's shadow disappearing into the red canyon mist, leaving her with nothing but the echo of his boots on stone and the hollow weight of betrayal. At first, she thought it was some kind of cruel mistake. Perhaps he had gone ahead to scout. Perhaps he would circle back for her with the horse. But the sound of hooves grew fainter, not closer, and when the dust settled, the truth pressed into her chest like a blade. He had left her behind. The canyon was no ordinary place. Locals whispered of it as the Valley of No Return, a jagged labyrinth carved by ancient rivers and unforgiving winds. Its cliffs rose sharp as broken teeth, catching the sun until the stone burned like fire. Shadows moved strangely there, stretching long where they should not, and the silence between gusts of wind was heavy enough to crush the spirit. Even in daylight, the place felt haunted. Clara stood frozen at first, her bonnet slipping down her back, hair sticking to her damp forehead. She had no food, no canteen, nothing but the faded blue dress she wore and the scuffed boots that pinched her toes. She clutched her shawl to her chest as if it might shield her from the vastness swallowing her whole. "Papa?" Her voice cracked against the canyon walls, echoing back like a ghost mocking her. She called again, louder, her throat raw, but the only answer was the harsh cry of a hawk circling high above. The sun climbed mercilessly overhead. Heat pressed down until her skin burned and her lips cracked. She walked for hours, stumbling on loose shale, her boots filling with dust. Each step sent pain up her legs, but stopping meant surrender, and she wasn't ready for that. Her father might be cruel, no, he was cruel, proven beyond doubt now, but she wasn't about to die in the desert just because he willed it so. By afternoon, her mouth felt like cotton, her tongue swollen against her teeth. Every bush she passed was dry, every stream bone-white and long dead. She thought of the stories her mother once told her before she died, the tales of pioneers who wandered into deserts and never came out again, their bodies shriveled to husks beneath the merciless sun. Clara bit her lip until she tasted blood, forcing the memory away. Her father's face rose in her mind, though she wished it wouldn't. His jaw set hard, his eyes cold. He had never forgiven her for being born a girl. He had wanted a son to carry on his name, to work the land with him. Instead, he had gotten Clara quiet, bookish, with a stubborn streak he despised. And now, when money ran dry and debts pressed on him like a tightening noose, he had chosen the simplest path. Leave her where no one would find her. It was abandonment, yes, but it felt like murder. The wind shifted, carrying with it the scent of juniper and dust. Somewhere in the distance, coyotes yipped, their cries sharp and mocking. Clara shivered despite the heat. She pulled her shawl tighter around her shoulders, though it did nothing against the rising dread. By evening, the sky bled into streaks of orange and violet, the sun dipping low behind the cliffs. The heat gave way to a sudden biting chill that cut through her thin dress. She found a cluster of boulders and collapsed against them, her body trembling from exhaustion. Tears welled in her eyes, but she swallowed them down. Crying would bring no water, no food, no salvation. She tilted her head back and stared at the stars that began to prick the heavens cold, sharp, indifferent. Her mind spun with questions she couldn't silence. Why here? Why like this? Did her father plan it, or was it a moment's decision? When he looked at her and decided she was more burden than blood, the night deepened. The coyotes grew bolder, their howls closer, weaving through the valley like a chorus of predators. Clara curled in on herself, every muscle taut, listening to the scrape of claws somewhere in the dark. She prayed the rocks would shield her, though she knew she was defenseless if they came. Her last thought before drifting into a restless half-sleep was bitter, yet burning with a stubborn ember of defiance. He left me to die, but I will not give him that satisfaction. Above her, the stars glittered mercilessly. Somewhere beyond the canyon's edge, unseen eyes watched the abandoned girl, and fate prepared to shift in a way she could never have imagined. The desert night fell like a curtain of black velvet, sharp and cold against Clara's sunburned skin. Stars appeared by the thousands, scattering across the heavens in glittering silence. She pulled her shawl tighter around her shoulders, though. The thin fabric did little against the chill that crept into her bones. Every breath turned to mist in the night air, and her teeth began to chatter. She sat curled against the rocks where she had collapsed, her knees drawn to her chest, staring into the abyss of the canyon. The day had taken nearly all her strength. Her lips were cracked and bleeding, her tongue swollen in her mouth. Hunger gnawed at her belly, but thirst was worse. It was a hollow ache that seemed to scrape her from the inside out. Clara had not dared to build a fire. The thought of coyotes, or worse, men seeing the light and coming toward her, made her shiver. Instead, she listened in the dark, every rustle of wind and scrape of stone sharpening her fear. That was when she heard it. Hoofbeats. Slow, measured, heavy dot at first. She thought her mind had conjured it some cruel trick of thirst and exhaustion. But no. The sound grew louder, echoing across the valley floor. A rhythm, a presence. Someone or something was out there in the blackness, moving closer. Her breath caught in her throat. She pressed herself against the stone, fingers digging into the cold surface until her knuckles ached. The hoofbeats grew steady, like a heartbeat in the earth. Then she saw it, a figure emerging from the desert haze. Rider and horse cloaked in silver moonlight. The horse was massive, a black stallion, with a mane that whipped in the wind like smoke. Its hooves struck the ground with a power that reverberated in Clara's chest. And upon its back sat a man who seemed carved from the very bones of the canyon. He dismounted in one fluid motion, tall and imposing, his silhouette cutting against the starlit sky. His long black hair, loose and wild, shimmered faintly with the glow of the moon. His chest was bare, muscles carved and hardened by battle, his skin bronze and marked with faint scars. Around his neck hung strands of turquoise beads and bone pendants that caught the light. Copper bands glinted on his arms, and eagle feathers swayed gently from his hair. Clara froze, breath locked in her lungs. He looked less like a man and more like a spirit risen from the earth, some warrior ghost of the valley. The stallion snorted and pawed the ground, sending dust swirling around them. The man's gaze fell on her, sharp and unyielding. His eyes were dark, bottomless, reflecting the fire of the stars overhead. He spoke, his voice deep and resonant, the words heavy with the cadence of someone who belonged to the land itself. At first, it was in a tongue she could not understand, smooth and rhythmic like water over stone. Then, switching, he said in broken but clear English, "You should not be here." Clara swallowed, her throat raw. "Please, help me." Her voice cracked with desperation, barely more than a whisper. The warrior tilted his head, studying her. His expression gave nothing away, but his silence pressed on her more heavily than words ever could. His eyes drifted from her trembling hands to the dust-caked hem of her dress, to the cracked lips that spoke of thirst. He knew. He could see it all, the abandonment, the weakness, the truth of her plight. Finally, he spoke again. "You are not lost," he said slowly, each word deliberate. "You were left." The words pierced her like an arrow. Her chest tightened, shame burning through her like fire. She had wanted to deny it, to believe her father might still come for her. But this stranger had spoken aloud what her heart already knew. The wind howled low through the canyon, carrying the faint cry of a coyote. The warrior stepped closer, and the ground seemed to tremble beneath his stride. Clara shrank back against the stone, unsure if this man was salvation or something far worse. He stopped only a few paces away. In the moonlight, she could see The scars across his chest, the weathered strength of him, the aura of command that clung to every movement. His presence was overwhelming, not just because of his size, but because he carried himself with the certainty of one who had seen death and returned from it. His stallion shifted behind him, tossing its head, but he never turned to look. His eyes stayed fixed on her, unwavering. "You are in my valley now," he said at last, his voice low but filled with a power that left no room for argument. "And in my valley, nothing is left behind without purpose." Clara's breath shuddered out of her lungs. She could not understand fully what he meant, but she knew with bone-deep certainty that her life had just changed forever. Somewhere deep inside, a whisper of fear and wonder stirred together, tangled in equal measure. Clara's breath hitched as the warrior stepped closer, his shadow stretching across the rocks like the reach of something inevitable. The moonlight framed him in silver, highlighting the sharp planes of his face and the raw strength etched into tine. Every line of his body. He was not a mirage, not some ghost of the desert. He was real flesh, blood, and terrifying power. Her throat ached as she tried to speak, the words scraping past her cracked lips. "Please, help me." The plea was fragile, half-choked by thirst and fear. For a long moment, the warrior only stared at her, his gaze steady and unyielding. His silence weighed heavier than words, pressing on her chest until she felt she might collapse beneath it. Finally, he spoke, his English clipped but clear, each syllable rolling low like distant thunder. "I saw," he said. "Your father rode away. You were not lost, you were left." The truth hit her like a blow. Shame flooded her veins, hot and searing. She wanted to protest, to deny it, but her trembling hands and dust-streaked face betrayed her. He knew. He had seen it with his own eyes. Her lips parted, searching for defense, but none came. She lowered her gaze to the dirt, humiliated, a sting burning in her chest deeper than thirst or hunger. The warrior moved closer still, the earth seeming to shift beneath the weight of his steps. The stallion behind him snorted, pawing the ground, but the man did not glance back. He had the aura of someone who did not need to look over his shoulder, of one who commanded the space he stood in, utterly certain of his dominion. When he stopped, a mere arm's length away, Clara's heart pounded so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. She dared a glance upward. His face was carved from stone, strong and unyielding, but his eyes were the most unnerving dark as obsidian, bottomless, as if they could see beyond the surface of her skin and into the marrow of her bones. "You should not fear me," he said, though the weight in his tone suggested the opposite. "But you should understand. In our ways, a woman abandoned in the valley belongs to the one who finds her." Clara froze, her mind reeling. "Belongs?" she whispered, voice trembling. The warrior's jaw tightened. "It is fate," he said simply, as though that explained everything. "I am Kale, war leader of the Dine. From this night forward, you are mine." The words struck like lightning, shocking her so deeply she almost forgot to breathe. Wife, property, claimed by a stranger. Fear flared in her chest, battling with disbelief. "No," she rasped, shaking her head violently. "I can't. I don't even know you." Kale's expression remained calm, though his eyes burned with something fierce. "You will." Her hands fisted at her sides, anger sparking to life despite her weakness. "I have a choice," she whispered, though even she knew how feeble it sounded. His gaze darkened, but not with cruelty, with certainty. "The valley chose for you. The moment your father left, you became no longer his. You became mine. If not me, another would have found you coyotes, wolves, men without honor. Do you think they would give you choice?" His words, though hard, carried no boast. They carried truth. She felt it in her bones, in the way the desert had watched her all day with pitiless eyes. If not for him, the valley would have devoured her. Tears pricked at the corners of her eyes, though she fought them back. "Why?" she asked hoarsely. "Why me?" Cale's stare softened, barely perceptible, like stone catching a glimmer of water. "Because the valley gave you to me," he said. "And what the valley gives, I do not refuse." The declaration left her trembling. She was not sure whether to scream or collapse or beg him to leave her be. But something in his voice, in the way he spoke of fate and purpose, unsettled her. This was no random act. He believed in what he said. Cale extended a hand. His palm was rough, scarred, strong enough to break her if he wished. For a long moment she stared at it, unmoving, her chest heaving. "I will not carry you," he said firmly. "You will walk beside me. That is how my wife enters camp." The words sent a chill through her. Wife. Already the world had shifted and she had no control of its course. Slowly trembling, she placed her hand into his. His fingers closed around hers, unyielding, sealing something she did not fully understand. Behind him, the black stallion pawed impatiently, the ground trembling beneath its hooves. Cale guided her forward, his hand never loosening. The desert wind whispered around them, carrying with it the scent of sage and the far-off cries of coyotes. As he led her into the night, Clara knew only one thing for certain. Her father had abandoned her, but this man had claimed her. And whether that meant salvation or captivity, she could no longer turn back. The night stretched long and silent as Cale led Clara through the canyon. Her legs ached with every step, but he never loosened his grip. His hand was steady, firm, unyielding, as if releasing her for even a moment might undo fate itself. The black stallion followed at their side, its eyes catching the moonlight like embers in the dark. Clara's heart raced with every footfall. The desert around them felt alive with unseen watchers, the shifting of shadows, the whisper of wind, the distant howl of coyotes. She wanted to ask where he was taking her, wanted to demand answers, but her throat was raw, her voice broken from thirst. The only sound between them was the steady rhythm of boots against sand and the quiet jingle of beads and pendants swaying across Cale's chest. Hours passed until finally, faint flickers of orange light appeared ahead. At first, she thought, it might be a mirage, the cruel trick of a desperate mind. But as they drew closer, the lights grew brighter, flames licking upward into the night. Voices carried on the air low, rhythmic, chanting in a language Clara didn't understand. When they stepped out of the canyon's shadows, Clara gasped. A camp spread wide before her, nestled between stone ridges and dotted with dozens of lodges. Fires burned in circles, their glow casting long shadows on painted faces. Warriors sat cross-legged in the dirt, their skin marked with ochre and ash, their dark eyes sharp and unblinking as they turned toward her. Women moved among them, tending pots of simmering venison, their braids shining in the firelight. Children played at the edge of the gathering, their laughter hushed as they caught sight of her. Every head turned. Every gaze followed. Clara felt the weight of their stares like heat against her skin. Her instinct was to shrink, to hide, but Cale's hand tightened on hers. He walked forward with the stride of a man who owned every inch of earth beneath his feet, his shoulders squared, his expression unreadable. The crowd parted before him without a word. They stopped at the largest fire, its flames snapping and hissing as sparks leapt skyward. Cale released her hand only long enough to lift his arms, calling out Navajo. His voice rang deep and commanding, carrying above the crackle of fire, each syllable sharp as a blade. The warriors responded with a chorus of shouts, stamping their feet against the dirt in rhythm. The sound rattled through Clara's chest, quickening her pulse. She didn't understand the words, but she understood their weight. He was declaring something. announcing her. Cale turned to her, his dark gaze steady, and placed a hand on her shoulder. It was not gentle, it was firm, grounding, a public gesture that seemed to burn hotter than the fire itself. He spoke again. To his people, his tone shifting from thunderous to resolute. The warriors erupted, some with nods of approval, others with clenched fists raised high. The women exchanged whispers, some curious, others sharp with disapproval. Clara felt her knees weaken. She wanted to protest, to deny whatever claim he had made, but the words caught in her throat. She stood frozen, a stranger in the circle of fire, her fate spoken into existence without her consent. Cale's hand did not leave her shoulder. His eyes locked with hers for an instant, and though his expression betrayed nothing, she felt the gravity of the moment. This was not simply about her. It was about him, about the tribe, about the power of the declaration he had made before them all. He leaned closer, his voice low enough that only she could hear. They know now. You are my wife. You will walk under my protection. Her breath caught, panic flaring inside her. Wife? She whispered, the word tasting foreign on her tongue. Cale's gaze remained steady. The valley gave you to me. The fire witnesses it. The people witness it. From this night, it cannot be undone. The flames crackled louder, as if sealing the oath. Clara's body trembled, but her spirit burned with resistance. Wife to a man she had just met. Bound to a stranger feared by all yet as she glanced around. The firelit circle, at the warriors whose eyes followed her, at the women whose whispers stung like thorns, she realized Cale's words carried truth. Alone, she would be nothing but prey in this world. With him, she might yet endure. The fire roared, sparks spiraling into the star-clad sky, and the echo of Cale's oath lingered in her chest. Claimed, bound, witnessed. And as the chants rose. Around her, Clara understood with chilling certainty. Her father had abandoned her to die, but Cale had given her no escape from living. The morning sun rose over the canyon like molten fire, painting the sandstone cliffs in bands of crimson and gold. The valley stirred with life. Women gathered water in clay pots. Children darted between the brush like swift rabbits, and smoke curled from cooking fires that filled the air with the scent of maize and roasted venison. Lila awoke on a bed of woven furs inside Cale's lodge, her heart pounding as if she had run a great distance. For a moment, she thought it was all a fever dream, the desert, the tribe, the man who had claimed her. But then she heard the sound of drumming outside, low and steady, and the memory struck her with painful clarity. Her father had left her. She pushed herself upright, clutching the blanket around her shoulders. The lodge was both beautiful and strange. Walls lined with painted hides, symbols of eagles, suns, and storm spirits inked in ochre. In the center lay a fire pit where the last embers smoldered, casting a faint glow across the earth floor. Cale's bow and quiver leaned against the wall, alongside a spear whose tip gleamed with sharpened obsidian. Everything spoke of discipline and strength. When she stepped outside, the sight stopped her breath. Cale stood near the corral where his stallion grazed. He was shirtless again, his muscular frame catching the full blaze of the morning sun. His long black hair cascaded down his back, bound with leather thongs and feathers, while turquoise beads and bone pendants clinked faintly against his chest. Copper bands gleamed at his wrists as he lifted a heavy spear in both hands, practicing fluid strikes with a precision that seemed almost ritualistic. Every movement was deliberate, as if he fought unseen enemies that only he could see. The tribe watched him with reverence. Young boys mimicked his stance with wooden sticks. Elders nodded solemnly, acknowledging his skill. Lila felt the weight of it. This was not a man others dared to question. He was the embodiment of the warrior's path, his presence woven into the tribe's rhythm like the beat of the drums. When Kale finally noticed her, he lowered the spear and strode toward her with a silence that unnerved her. His eyes, dark as obsidian, studied her face with neither softness nor cruelty only. "Certainty. You walk among my people now," he said, his deep voice carrying like thunder across the valley. "They will not harm you, but you belong to me." The words seared into her. Belong. She wanted to protest, to scream that she had been taken, not given. But the memory of her father's back as he disappeared into the canyon's shadows silenced her tongue. Her chest ached with betrayal. Kale seemed to notice her trembling, though he did not reach for her. Instead, he gestured toward a group of women who stood nearby, watching. One of them stepped forward, an older woman with braids streaked with silver, her face weathered but kind. She pressed a clay cup into Lila's hands. Steam rose from it, the scent of herbs and pine filling her nose. "Drink," the woman said softly, her English halting but clear. "It will give you strength." Lila hesitated, then sipped. The liquid was bitter, yet it warmed her from within, steadying her shaking limbs. Kale's gaze lingered on her, unreadable. Then he turned away, addressing his people in their tongue. His voice rose and fell like wind through canyon walls, strong, commanding, unyielding. Though she did not understand the words, she felt their weight. The people nodded, some raising their fists in agreement. She realized with a cold shiver what he was doing. He was announcing her, declaring before all that she was now his. Later, as the day stretched on, Lila was led through the camp. Children trailed after her, their laughter ringing out like bells, curious about the pale-skinned girl in their midst. Women showed her how to grind maize with stone, how to weave simple patterns into cloth. Though their words were foreign, their gestures were gentle. Yet every time she glanced back, Kale's dark figure was never far, always watching, always present like a shadow tied to her fate. That night, under a sky splashed with stars, Lila lay on the furs inside the lodge again, listening to the distant drumbeats. Outside, she could hear Kale's low voice speaking with elders, the tone of command never wavering. She closed her eyes, whispering to herself, "I will not break." But deep inside she wondered, was her captivity truly a prison, or the beginning of a destiny she could not yet see? The night was colder than usual, the desert wind sliding through the canyon like a knife. Lila sat near the edge of the fire pit, her arms wrapped tightly around herself as the flames snapped and sent sparks into the dark sky. The Navajo camp had fallen into a hush. Only the low murmur of women in their lodges and the occasional nicker of horses broke the silence. But inside her chest, everything thundered. For days she had lived under Kale's watch, caught between captivity and protection. The people treated her with wary distance, some pity in their eyes, others only suspicion. Yet none dared to challenge Kale. His word was law, and when he had declared her his, the tribe had simply bowed their heads. But tonight, her spirit finally rebelled. The thought had been growing like a thorn in her mind. If she didn't try to leave now, she never would. When Kale went to speak with the elders by the far lodge, she noticed his back was turned. His black stallion was tied close by, its reins loosely looped around a post. The beast stamped its hooves in the dirt, restless, as if it too sensed her. Rising desperation, her pulse hammered as she stood slowly, quietly, moving away from the fire. No one was looking. The shadows cloaked her, her steps careful as she edged closer to the horse. She whispered a prayer her father used to say, begging for strength, for deliverance. Her hand had just closed around the stallion's reins, when a voice cut the night. "Do you think the valley lets you leave so easily?" Lila froze, her throat closing. She turned slowly, and there he was, Kale emerging from the shadows as if the darkness itself had birthed him. He was shirtless, his powerful form outlined by the glow of fire behind him, scars like etched stories across his chest. His long black hair whipped in the wind, feathers tied near the ends trembling with each gust. The turquoise and bone jewelry at his throat gleamed faintly, but it was his eyes, dark, steady, unyielding, that held her trapped. Lila's voice shook. "I can't stay here." "I don't belong to you?" Cale stepped closer, the sand crunching beneath his bare feet. His presence was overwhelming and yet not violent. He tilted his head slightly, studying her with an intensity that made her want to shrink back. But she forced herself to stand tall, though her knees trembled. "You think you are still lost because you walk with fear," he said quietly, his voice deep, rich, carrying like a drumbeat through the night. "But fear does not make you free. It makes you weaker than chains." She tightened her grip on the reins. "Then let me find my freedom." For a long moment, silence stretched between them. The wind howled through the canyon, tugging at her dress, sending sparks dancing from the fire. Then Cale closed the distance, standing so near that she could feel the heat radiating from his skin. He placed a hand gently, firmly, over hers on the leather strap. "You wish to run from me," he murmured, "but you would not last a day out there. The desert devours the unprepared. And your father," his voice hardened, his jaw tightening, "your father gave you away like a lamb to wolves. I took you because I would not see you broken by others less merciful." The words struck her like arrows. She wanted to deny them, to scream that he was her captor and nothing more. Yet her father's face flashed in her mind, his cold, distant eyes as he left her in the valley, his hand pulling away from hers. The memory burned, and for a moment her defiance faltered. Cale's hand remained on hers, steady, unwavering. "You can hate me," he said softly, "but know this. Here, you are under my protection. Outside, you are nothing but prey." Her chest rose and fell rapidly, her tears threatening to spill. "Why me? Why claim me?" she whispered. His eyes softened, just enough to reveal something beneath the steel. "Because I saw strength in you, even when you were abandoned. And strength deserves to live, not die in the dust." The reins slipped from her hands as her resolve cracked, though her spirit still fought against surrender. She turned her face away, ashamed of the tears on her cheeks, ashamed that part of her wanted to believe him. Cale stepped back then, his shadow retreating into the firelight. He gave her one final look, unreadable and haunting. "The breaking point is not when chains bind you," he said. "It is when you choose whether to rise or to shatter." With that, he left her standing by the restless stallion, caught between two worlds, her desperate longing for escape and the strange, terrifying safety found only in the presence of the warrior who had claimed her dot. And as the wind swept through the valley, carrying with it the cry of distant coyotes, Lila realized her battle had only just begun. The storm broke the sky open. Rain pelted the earth, turning dust to mud, thunder rumbling over the valley like the voice of some ancient god. Flames from the camp torches hissed as drops fell against them, but the circle of warriors held firm. Their eyes were not on the storm, but on the girl kneeling, soaked, trembling, and on the man who now stood as her only barrier against their judgment. Cale, the most feared warrior of the Navajo, towered shirtless before them, his broad shoulders glistening beneath the storm's tears. His long black hair whipped across his stern face, lightning painting his sharp cheekbones in flashes of silver light. Tribal jewelry, the turquoise beads, the bone pendants, the copper armbands clung to his body like the symbols of a forgotten king. He did not bow to the fury of the storm nor the fury of his people. He stood immovable, his presence commanding. Silence. The elder of the tribe spoke first, his voice gravel rough. "She is the child of white men, left here by her own blood. What place does she hold among us but as a slave, or worse, a curse?" The warriors growled their agreement, voices like a gathering pack of wolves. Yet Cale raised his hand, and the storm seemed to pause in respect. His deep voice cut through the noise. "She was abandoned," he thundered. "Not by our hand, but by the man who should have protected her. She is no enemy. She is a spirit delivered to us by fate. And fate does not waste its gifts." The girl's chest rose and fell with ragged breaths. She wanted to scream, to deny him, to reject being called a gift. And yet, when his eyes met hers, something inside her trembled, not with fear, but with the strange pull of safety. One of the younger warriors spat into the mud. "Safety? She brings danger. The soldiers hunt these lands. If they find her here, they will bring death upon us all." The circle erupted in agreement again. The storm cracked with lightning that lit the canyon walls, throwing the shadows of the warriors high and monstrous against the rocks. Cale stepped forward, his bare feet sinking into the mud. His voice boomed. "If soldiers come, they will meet me first. If death comes, it will come through me. I will not allow this girl to be cast aside like refuse. She will live here with me." The last words rolled through the air heavier than thunder. The implication was clear. She would not just live among them. She would be bound to him, the warrior who commanded the fiercest loyalty of the tribe. The girl gasped, her heart caught in her throat. To be cast away by her father was one wound. To be taken as a wife by the feared warrior was another wound she did not know how to carry. Yet, within the sharpness of the words, there was also an unspoken shield. He had claimed her not to hurt her, but to protect her. The elder squinted at him, rain dripping from his long hair. "You would stake your honor, your blood, your very life on this?" Cale's eyes burned like black fire. "My life, my blood, my honor all already belong to the spirits of war. If I must sacrifice them, I will. But no harm will touch her. So long as I draw breath." Silence fell heavy. Even the storm seemed to hush. The tribe, one by one, lowered their heads, accepting his decision not out of agreement, but because none dared stand against Cale when his mind was set. The circle broke. Warriors retreated to their shelters. The elder remained for a long moment, his eyes resting on the girl with something between pity and warning. Then he too stepped back, vanishing into the sheets of rain. Now only Cale and the girl remained, in the muddy circle lit by dying torches. She stared at him, every muscle trembling. "Why?" she whispered, her voice breaking, nearly lost in the storm. "Why would you do this?" Cale bent down, so close that she could see the stormlight in his eyes. His words rumbled low, like distant thunder. "Because I know what it is to be abandoned." He stood again, his powerful form towering over her, hair plastered against his skin, jewelry gleaming like fire against bronze. He extended a hand to her, not as a captor, but as a man offering a choice. Her chest rose with a sharp breath. The storm still raged, the tribe still doubted, her heart still feared. Yet when her eyes locked with his, she realized something. She was not broken glass left in the dirt, she was something worth claiming. Slowly, trembling, she placed her hand in his. And in that instant, with the storm crashing around them and the tribe watching from the shadows, her fate was sealed. She was no longer the girl abandoned in the valley. She was the wife of the most feared Navajo warrior.